The doctor didn't look at me when he said it, he looked at the floor, like the truth was too heavy for his own eyes. I was still holding my newborn, the little blanket trembling because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. My husband stood by the door, arms crossed, waiting for the doctor to confirm the lie he had been telling everyone, including himself. But when the doctor finally whispered the words, "Quiet, careful," like they might break the room, my husband's face changed first. Then mine. Because nothing after that moment stayed the same. I remember the hallway being colder than the delivery room. Hospitals always felt cold, but that morning felt different, like the walls themselves were pulling away from us, creating space so the truth could fit somewhere between. I stood by the window, rocking my newborn daughter against my chest, watching the early Texas sunlight slip across the parking lot. The world outside looked normal. Quiet. Unbothered. Like it didn't care that my life was about to split into a before and an after. My husband, Daniel, paced the hallway with the kind of restlessness that wasn't about nerves, it was about suspicion. Every few seconds, he would glance toward me and the baby, and then look away quickly, as if holding his stare too long would make him admit something he wasn't ready to say out loud. He had doubts for months. I tried to brush them aside. I tried to tell myself that every couple has rough patches, that every marriage has moments when fear gets louder than love. But the night before I gave birth, he said it directly to my face, "I don't think that baby is mine." He didn't whisper. He didn't tremble. He said it coldly, plainly, like someone stating a weather report. And now, standing in that hallway, he waited for the doctor to prove him right. I kept my daughter close, breathing in her warmth. She smelled like milk and clean cotton and the kind of hope you'd think a man would recognize. But Daniel leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, jaw tight, like he was preparing for a verdict. When the doctor finally stepped out of his office, his expression wasn't clinical, it was concerned. He looked from me, to Daniel, then back to the sleeping baby in my arms. He cleared his throat before speaking. "Mrs. Hale," he started, but Daniel cut him off. "Just tell me," he said sharply. "I want the truth." The doctor frowned, adjusting the small folder in his hands. "Why don't we step into my office?" "No," Daniel snapped. "Say it here." I held my baby tighter. She stirred slightly, but didn't cry. She didn't know her father's doubts. She didn't know her mother's fear. She only knew the rhythm of my heartbeat, steady, desperate, trying to stay calm. The doctor exhaled slowly. And then, he stepped closer, not to Daniel, but to me. He lowered his voice, so soft only we could hear. "Mrs. Hale, your blood type is incompatible with the test they ran last night." My breath caught. "What test?" He looked at the baby. Then at the file. Then back at me. "The test that determines biological relationship." Daniel straightened, eyes narrowing. "So what are you saying?" The doctor swallowed, and whispered the words that made my knees weaken. "I'm saying, she is your husband's child." Silence. Cold, heavy silence. Daniel blinked slowly, like he needed the room to stop moving before he reacted. He didn't apologize. He didn't even exhale. He just stared, first at the doctor, then at the baby he had spent months denying, and then at me. And I realized something in that moment. Sometimes the truth doesn't save a marriage. Sometimes, it exposes it. The doctor stepped back, giving us space, a space that felt even colder than the hallway. And that's when I noticed something else, something the doctor said under his breath as he turned away, something he didn't mean for me to hear. "That's not the only issue." My heart stopped. Not the only issue? What else could there be? What truth was still waiting behind the next door? I tightened my grip on my daughter, suddenly terrified that the lie we had just shattered was only the beginning. The doctor's footsteps faded down the hallway, but his unfinished sentence didn't. "That's not the only issue." The words clung to the air like humidity before a storm, barely noticeable, but impossible to ignore once you felt it. I tried to steady my breathing, but my heartbeat was loud enough to echo inside my ribs. My daughter shifted against my chest, soft and warm, unaware that the world around her mother was beginning to tilt. For a moment, I stared at her tiny fingers curled around the blanket. They were so delicate, too delicate to be connected to something ominous. Daniel stood opposite me, still frozen, like the truth the doctor revealed hadn't fully reached him yet. He looked at our daughter, then me, then back at the closed door the doctor disappeared behind. His expression was unreadable, not angry, not relieved, but something in between. Something colder. You heard him, I said quietly. She's yours. Daniel didn't look at me. I heard part of what he said. My chest tightened. What is that supposed to mean? He pushed off the wall, running a hand over his face. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked uncertain. It scared me more than his anger ever had. Daniel was a man who always knew where to place his next step. This moment, this hesitation, felt like watching a house settle before it collapses. We need answers, he muttered. No, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need answers. Before he could respond, the doctor returned, clipboard pressed against his chest like he was shielding himself with paperwork. His eyes avoided mine at first, landing on Daniel as if he knew their conversation would be harder. Can we speak privately? He asked. No, I said firmly. Both men looked at me. You don't get to hide anything from me, I continued. Not about my child. The doctor hesitated, then nodded slightly, accepting the boundary I drew. He stepped closer and lowered his voice, but it carried clearly through the hallway. Your daughter is healthy, he said gently. She's stable. Strong. Nothing life-threatening. Relief washed through me, but only for a second, because he wasn't finished. But, there's something unusual in the records. Daniel stiffened. What records? The doctor flipped open the folder, revealing a set of papers clipped together, most of them marked with multicolored tabs and handwritten notes. He pointed to a line that looked like it belonged in a different file altogether. This isn't the first time a newborn with her markers has appeared here. I frowned. What does that mean? He took a long breath. 2 years ago, another baby was brought in. Same rare blood incompatibility. Same unusual genetic marker. Same confusion between parental tests. My mind raced. The hallway felt narrower. Smaller. Like it was squeezing around us. Are you saying my daughter matches another child who was here? I whispered. The doctor didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, I checked the records twice before coming to you. The cases are disturbingly similar. Daniel's jaw tightened. So? Coincidence? The doctor didn't blink. It didn't feel like one. I felt the weight of my daughter in my arms, suddenly heavier, as if she could sense the fear crawling beneath my skin. What happened to the other baby? I asked. The doctor hesitated. She was transferred, he said finally. To where? His eyes flickered, and that tiny movement told me everything. There was something he wasn't allowed to say. Something someone else didn't want us to know. And for the first time since giving birth, I felt a coldness that had nothing to do with the hospital air. Because this wasn't just about paternity anymore. Something bigger, darker, was tied to my daughter. And whatever the truth was. The doctor was afraid of it. The word transferred hung between us like a loose wire sparking in an abandoned room. Clean, professional, harmless, yet somehow the most threatening thing the doctor had said so far. Transferred where? I repeated, slower this time, because I already sensed he would try to dodge it again. The doctor swallowed. His gaze flickered to the security camera at the end of the hallway before drifting back to us. Out of state. That's not an answer, I said. He let out a quiet exhale. It's complicated. Everything about him felt wrong, his posture, his hesitation, the way he kept glancing over his shoulder as if someone might walk up at any moment and shut him up. Daniel moved closer to the doctor, lowering his voice. "We're not leaving until you tell us everything." The doctor looked uncomfortable but resigned, as though he'd been carrying this secret long before we even walked into the maternity ward. He motioned toward a side room, a small consultation space with frosted glass windows and a humming air vent overhead. When the door clicked shut behind us, the room seemed to absorb the tension rather than ease it. The doctor set the folder on the metal table. "What I'm about to tell you isn't something I should share. If administration finds out." "Administration can wait," I snapped. He nodded slowly. 2 years ago, a woman delivered a baby girl here. Same rare blood marker. Same conflict in paternity results. The father insisted the baby wasn't his. The mother insisted something was wrong. My blood chilled. "And what happened to them?" I asked. He hesitated. "The mother disappeared 3 weeks after delivery. The baby was placed into state custody and transferred to a specialized facility in Nevada." "Disappeared?" Daniel echoed. "How?" "She checked out of the hospital and never showed up to a single follow-up appointment. Her phone was disconnected. Welfare visits found her apartment emptied." "People don't just disappear," I said. The doctor closed the folder. "They do when someone wants them erased." The room went still. Even the air vent seemed to soften, like the building was listening. Daniel stepped back, shaking his head. "So you think, what? That this is some pattern? A coincidence? A conspiracy?" The doctor's voice lowered. "Patterns don't scare me. Patterns that come back, do." I stared at my daughter, asleep in my arms, her tiny chest rising and falling peacefully. The thought of another baby, one with her same impossible markers, lying somewhere unknown tightened something deep inside me. "Why didn't anyone investigate?" I whispered. "They did," the doctor said. 2 officers came. Asked a few questions. Then the case went cold. "And you think this is happening again?" Daniel asked. The doctor didn't answer right away. He pressed his palm to his forehead, like he was fighting through something he'd kept buried too long. "The moment I saw her test results," he said quietly, "I knew this wasn't random. It's connected. Patients like this, mothers like you, they don't just walk into the same hospital by accident." A cold pulse crept down my spine. "What are you saying?" I asked. He looked directly at me for the first time, and what I saw wasn't fear, it was guilt. "I think someone knew you'd deliver here," he whispered. My breath caught. "And I think they're watching again." The silence that followed was suffocating. Even Daniel's disbelief evaporated as the weight of that possibility sank in. This wasn't about paternity. This wasn't about medical confusion. This was about control. Tracking. Pattern. Purpose. Someone out there was watching newborns with my daughter's rare markers. Someone out there had taken the last one. And now, they were waiting for mine. The drive home felt unreal, like the world outside the windshield had thinned, turned quieter, as if even the air sensed something had taken root in the space between us. Daniel kept both hands tight on the wheel, knuckles pale, jaw locked. He hadn't spoken a word since we left the hospital. I clutched our daughter against my chest, her tiny warmth the only steady thing in a world that suddenly felt rearranged. The doctor's words replayed in my mind like a warning whispered too late. The mother disappeared. Vanished. Left behind a baby who was taken and moved like cargo. The thought made my throat burn. When we reached our house, our quiet suburban home with its soft yellow porch lights and potted rosemary plants, I expected comfort. But it felt different now. Smaller. Less safe. Daniel finally broke the silence. That doctor was trying to scare us. Was he? I whispered. He hesitated. "Come on, Babies don't just get taken. People don't just disappear. That's movie stuff. Then why was he shaking, Daniel? He didn't answer. We walked inside. The house smelled like lavender detergent and the faint sweetness of the cookies Daniel had baked before rushing me to the hospital. It should have felt familiar. Instead, it felt staged, like a place we used to recognize. I set the baby down in her bassinet and watched her tiny fingers curl and uncurl. Her skin was warm, her breathing soft, her world simple. I envied her. Daniel sank onto the couch, rubbing his face. We should report what he said. To who? I asked. If the last woman reported it, what good did it do her? He didn't answer because he already knew I was right. I sat beside him, our knees touching. Daniel, what if it is connected? What if someone is actually? He cut me off. Then why you? Why her? Why this hospital? The question made me still. Why me? Why us? I didn't want to say it. I hated that I even thought it. But the doctor's words had carved too deep. What if it wasn't an accident we ended up at that hospital? I murmured. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? You think someone planned? I don't know, I whispered. But someone knew enough to take another mother and another baby with the same markers. The baby stirred in the bassinet, making a soft sound like a sigh. I reached for her instinctively. And that's when I noticed the envelope. It was on our kitchen table. Plain. White. Not there when we left for the hospital. The sight of it made my stomach drop. Daniel, I said slowly, pointing. Did you move the mail? He followed my gaze, and froze. I didn't touch anything. We walked toward it together, our steps careful, as if the envelope might move. The house felt too still, too aware. The envelope wasn't sealed. Just folded shut. Waiting. Daniel opened it. Inside was a single photograph. A grainy picture of a woman holding a newborn, not in a hospital, but outside a motel. Her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. The same bassinet blanket pattern we were given at our hospital draped over her arm. But that wasn't the part that made my blood run cold. Taped to the corner of the photo was a date. 18 days after the woman supposedly disappeared. She hadn't vanished. She'd been running. A message was scrawled on the back in rushed handwriting, the ink smeared at the edges. If you're reading this, they already know about your baby too. My legs went numb. Daniel inhaled sharply. What the hell is this? Who put this here? I didn't answer. Because something else on the picture froze me completely, something so small most people would miss it. In the background of that motel photo, parked in the shadow, was a car. A familiar car. The same make. The same color. The same dent near the front bumper. Daniel's car. I felt the words forming before I could speak them. Daniel, why is your car in this picture? Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. His eyes were locked on the photograph like it was dissolving every lie he'd ever told, or every truth he was terrified to admit. I felt the silence stretch between us, thick and suffocating. Say something, I whispered. He swallowed hard, lowering the picture to the table as though it burned his fingers. I don't know. Anyone could have the same car. No, I said quietly. Not with that dent. I pointed. You told me a shopping cart hit it last winter. You showed me. He closed his eyes for a moment, too long. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Daniel, why is your car in a photo with the woman who went missing? He held up both hands as if defending himself from invisible accusations. I swear, I don't know who she is. I've never been near that motel. This photo was taken 18 days after she vanished, I said. Someone lied about her disappearing, and you were there. I wasn't, he snapped, too fast, too sharp. The baby stirred in her bassinet, and I instinctively moved toward her, placing a hand on her small chest. Protecting her. Shielding her. From what? I wasn't sure anymore. Daniel took a step toward us, then stopped when he saw the way I stiffened. Suddenly, the house didn't feel like ours. The air didn't feel like ours. The man in front of me didn't feel like mine. He raked a hand through his hair. Okay. Just, listen to me. There has to be an explanation. Someone could have followed me. Or someone who knows me could be trying to. To what? I cut in. Frame you? Scare us? About what? About why our baby matches a stranger's blood markers? About why the doctor looked terrified to even speak? His jaw tightened. You're scaring yourself, he said, voice low. That doctor shouldn't have said any of that. People don't just take babies. Except someone did, I whispered. To her. The baby let out a small whimper. I picked her up, holding her close, breathing in her warmth just to stay grounded. That's when Daniel stepped closer, slowly, carefully, and for the first time, I backed away from him. His face broke. You really think I'd hurt you, he whispered. I don't know what to think, I said honestly. But you're hiding something. I can feel it. He opened his mouth to argue, but then something caught his eye. He leaned down and picked up the envelope again, tilting it so the light hit the inside flap. There's something else in here, he murmured. A small slip of paper slid onto the table. Not a note. Not handwriting. A receipt. A gas station receipt from a town 40 minutes away, the same town printed on the motel sign in the photograph. And the timestamp was damning. 2:14 a.m., the night before my contractions started. Daniel stared at it, frozen. My chest tightened. You told me you were home that night, I said, my voice barely a breath. You said you fell asleep on the couch. He looked at me now, truly looked, and something in his expression cracked open. I can explain, he whispered. But the tremor in his voice told me the truth before he ever could. There was a connection between him and the woman before me. And I wasn't supposed to know. Before he could speak again, the baby let out a sudden, sharp cry, a cry she never made. A cry of discomfort. Pain. I pulled the blanket back to check her. 2 small marks, faint, on her thigh. Identical to the marks the doctor said the missing woman's baby had. My knees went weak. Daniel, I whispered, trembling now. What did you let them do to our daughter? He went pale. For the first time, he couldn't breathe. It sharpened a thin, strained, like something inside her hurt in a way she couldn't explain. I held her tighter, but my own arms were trembling so badly I almost dropped the blanket. Give her to me, Daniel said, stepping closer. No. My voice came out steady. Unshakably steady. Don't touch her. He froze mid-step. The baby's tiny body shivered once, then fell into a whimpering rhythm that broke every part of me. I kept her pressed against my chest, rocking her gently, but my eyes never left Daniel. What did you let happen? I whispered. He shook his head, his voice thin. I didn't. I wouldn't, please just listen. Before he could finish, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something inside me, some instinct older than fear, forced my thumb to swipe. Hello? My voice was barely there. There was breathing on the other end. Shaky. Uneven. Then a man spoke. This is Dr. Hale. You need to get out of that house. Right now. My heart stopped. Daniel stiffened. Who is it? I didn't answer him. The doctor's whisper was frantic. Don't argue. Don't wait. Take the baby and leave now. I clutched the phone tighter. Why? What's happening? He hesitated, and I could hear papers rustling, metal trays shaking, like he was speaking while looking over his shoulder. The blood test I ran this morning, he said, almost out of breath. The markers, your baby's markers, they match something I haven't seen since. He cut himself off. Since when? I demanded. Silence. And then. Since the missing woman's baby. My knees nearly buckled. She never gave birth, Dr. Hale whispered. There was no baby in her medical file. But someone submitted a sample 2 weeks ago, labeled under a fake ID. Same condition. Same mutation. Same pairing. What does that mean? I choked out. It means the child you're holding, he said, voice cracking. Might not be the one you delivered. My vision blurred. The floor tilted. My arms tightened around the baby like instinct, like terror, like a mother refusing to accept the world spinning out from under her. Behind me, Daniel whispered, "What is he telling you?" I stepped away from him again. Dr. Hale continued, faster now. Someone swapped 2 infants. Yours, and hers. That's why the blood tests don't match. That's why the baby's symptoms are escalating. She's reacting to the medication they used. And if the same people who took her baby know you're asking questions. A door slammed somewhere loudly on his end. Doctor? I gasped. Go, he hissed. Go now, before he. The line went dead. I felt the blood drain from my body. Slowly, like his bones were made of glass, Daniel reached out a shaking hand. Give me the phone, he said. No. My voice cracked through the air like lightning. He took a single step toward me anyway. Please, he whispered. You don't understand what's happening. Oh, I do, I whispered back. I just don't understand your part in it. His eyes softened, broke, something inside him splintering. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he murmured. My breath hitched. What wasn't supposed to be like this? He opened his mouth. But the baby suddenly jerked, a tiny, sharp, painful movement, and let out a cry I'd never heard before. A cry filled with agony. I pulled her close, heart pounding. Tell me now, I whispered. What did you and those people do to my daughter? Daniel's lips parted. And he finally said it. She isn't the only baby they switched. I didn't stay in the hospital room after the doctor left. I couldn't. The walls felt too tight, the lights too bright, and every beat from the monitors made my chest pull tighter. So I stepped outside, still holding Lily against me, her tiny breath warming the fabric of my shirt. The afternoon sun was soft, almost gentle, as if the world didn't realize mine had just cracked open. I walked toward the edge of the parking lot, trying to breathe. But that's when I felt it. Not heard, not saw, felt the presence of someone watching. It was subtle at first, like the way your stomach dips when someone stands behind you in a grocery line. But then it grew heavier. Heavier. Until every hair on my arms lifted. I turned slowly. At the far corner of the lot, half hidden behind a row of old pine trees, stood a man. Tall. Still. Not moving. His hands were in his pockets, and his posture was too calm, like someone who had been waiting a long time. At first, I thought maybe he was just another visitor. But then he stepped out a little further into the light. And I recognized the jacket. A brown corduroy jacket with a tear on the left sleeve, the same one I had seen months earlier, on a stranger standing across the street from our house, watching our windows. My throat tightened. I held Lily closer. And for a moment, we just stared at each other, the distance between us shrinking even though neither of us moved. A slow, deliberate smile tugged at one side of his mouth, but it wasn't kind. It was knowing. Familiar. Like he was waiting for me to remember something. Then he lifted his hand. Not waving. Just raising it, palm outwards, like a warning. Or a claim. I stepped back instinctively. He stepped forward. That was when the door behind me opened, and Daniel rushed out. Emily. Why did you leave the room? I was. His voice stopped. He saw the man too. And the expression on Daniel's face didn't match mine. Because I was afraid. But Daniel looked guilty. Emily, he said slowly, his voice suddenly thin, get back inside. No, I whispered. Tell me who he is. Daniel didn't answer. The man took another step forward. The sunlight pushed across his face, revealing a scar that cut through his eyebrow, sharp and pale like an old wound. He wasn't smiling anymore. His eyes were fixed on Lily, not me. And something inside me snapped awake. I shifted my stance, clutching Lily protectively. The man stopped walking, tilted his head slightly, and then did something that froze my bones. He mouthed a word. Just one. Mine. Before I could understand, before I could breathe, the sound of tires screeched nearby. A security guard rushed toward us, shouting something indistinct. The man in the torn jacket stepped back into the shadows so smoothly it was like watching smoke retreating. Within seconds, he was gone. But the fear he left behind stayed. Daniel grabbed my arm. Emily, we have to talk. Now. His voice was shaking. For the first time, I realized. The doctor wasn't the only one who knew the truth. Daniel did too. And so did that man. The truth wasn't coming. The truth was already here. I didn't follow Daniel back inside the hospital. I didn't move at all. For a long second, we just stood there, the automatic doors behind us humming like an engine waiting to swallow us whole. Lily's tiny breaths warmed the crook of my elbow, grounding me, keeping me from slipping into the rising panic swirling inside my chest. Daniel glanced toward the tree where the man had disappeared. His jaw clenched once, then again. And that was when I realized something important. He wasn't shocked. He was terrified, but not surprised. Emily, he whispered, stepping closer, come inside. Please. No, my voice came out colder than I expected. Tell me who he is. He hesitated. That hesitation was all the answer I needed. How long? I asked. Daniel swallowed. His eyes dropped to the pavement. It's complicated. Complicated? I repeated. My voice shook. Is he the father? Daniel flinched like I had slapped him. Silence stretched so long I could hear my heartbeat pounding beneath Lily's blanket. My mind began stitching together pieces I had ignored, late-night phone calls, business trips that didn't make sense, the look Daniel gave me when I told him I was pregnant. A look I had mistaken for surprise. Now I saw it for what it really was. Fear. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Emily. I never cheated on you. The air around me thinned. Then why does that man think Lily is his? He didn't answer. Not right away. And when he finally did, his voice was so soft I had to lean in to hear it. Because he thinks he owns us. I stared at him. What does that mean? Daniel exhaled shakily. Years ago, before we met, I worked for him. He ran things in town you didn't know about. Payments, people, favors that weren't really favors. When I left, he didn't just let me walk away. My skin prickled. Lily shifted softly in my arms. He said I owed him, Daniel continued, eyes darting to the tree again. And when we got married, he said I owed him more. And when you got pregnant, his voice broke. He said he wanted something to bind me to him forever. I felt cold. Down to the bone. You're telling me, I whispered slowly, that man, that stranger, believes this baby is his because of some arrangement? No. Daniel stepped forward. Nothing happened. Nothing physical. He said things. To scare me. To control me. And he started showing up. Watching the house. Calling from blocked numbers. I didn't know how to tell you. So you didn't, I said bitterly. Daniel pressed a hand to his face. I thought if I stayed quiet, he'd go away. But he didn't. No, Daniel whispered. And now he knows about Lily. He must have seen the hospital registration. He must have followed us. My knees weakened. I sat down on the low concrete barrier beside the parking lot. Lily stirred, her little fist pressing into my shirt. The innocence in her tiny form contrasted so violently with the shadows surrounding us that it made my throat tighten. Emily, Daniel breathed, crouching beside me. I swear, he is not her father. But he won't stop. These men don't stop. They attach themselves until something breaks. Something had already broken. My trust. My safety. The quiet life I thought we had. What does he want now? I whispered. Daniel didn't look at me when he answered. He wants Lily. Not because she's his, but because she's mine. The wind rustled the trees behind us, and for a moment, I swear I heard footsteps again, soft, deliberate, retreating into the woods. The man wasn't gone. He was waiting. And now, he knew we were scared. We didn't go back inside the hospital right away. Daniel stood there with one hand on his hip, the other gripping his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. I held Lily closer, rocking her gently even though my own breathing was unsteady. I felt like the world had tilted under my feet, like nothing around me was solid anymore. Emily, Daniel finally said, I need you to trust me. I let out a cold, humorless laugh. You gave a stranger power over our life, Daniel. A man who just walked out of the woods claiming my newborn is his. Tell me, how exactly am I supposed to trust you? He didn't answer. Because there wasn't an answer that could fix any of this. Inside the hospital, nurses moved quickly in the hallway, mothers held their babies, and families talked softly in waiting rooms. It was supposed to be the safest place on earth, a place where new beginnings happened. But for me, the world felt darker than it ever had. We followed a nurse to a private room. Daniel closed the blinds even though it was daytime, then locked the door like he expected the man to walk straight in. And that's when I noticed it. Daniel's hands were shaking. He sat down heavily in the chair by the window and ran both hands through his hair, tugging at it. I thought I could protect you, he whispered. I thought if I didn't bring you into it, you'd stay safe. You didn't protect me, I said quietly. You isolated me. He flinched. I looked down at Lily. She was awake now, her tiny mouth moving against the blanket as she searched for warmth. Her eyelids fluttered, so light and innocent. The kind of innocence adults destroy without meaning to. Or sometimes meaning to. There was a soft knock at the door, just 3 taps. My heart froze. Daniel rushed to stand, pressing a finger to his lips. His eyes widened in warning. Another knock. Slower this time. He mouthed, don't move. I held Lily against my chest, feeling the faint beat of her heart against mine. Daniel stepped to the door and spoke through the crack. Who is it? A pause. Then a voice, but not the man's. A nurse. Sir? You dropped this in the hallway. Daniel opened the door an inch, then more. The nurse handed him a folded piece of paper. We found it by the vending machine, she said, smiling politely. Thought it might be important. After she left, Daniel closed the door and locked it again. Emily, he whispered, I didn't drop anything today. A cold rush went through my body. He unfolded the note. A single sentence was scrawled across it in sharp, slanted handwriting. She looks just like you did. Below it was a small drawing, 3 stick figures. 2 tall ones. And 1 tiny one in the middle. A family. Not ours. His. Daniel stumbled back into the chair. How did he get inside? I didn't have to ask who he was. I scanned the room, panic rising. The blinds. The hallway. The corners. Everything felt unsafe now, as if someone had already been here, already breathed our air. Daniel? My voice cracked. What does that mean? Why would he say she looks like me? Daniel didn't look at me. He couldn't. Instead, he covered his face with his hands, shoulders trembling as he whispered. Emily. I don't think he followed us today. I think he's been watching you, for a long time. The room felt smaller. The air grew thick. My mind flashed back to random moments, times I'd felt watched, odd cars parked near the house, the shadow I'd seen outside the grocery store weeks before I gave birth. All the tiny moments I'd brushed off as coincidence. They weren't coincidences. They were warnings. And I had missed them. Lily whimpered softly in my arms, her tiny body curling closer to mine. Daniel stood suddenly. We need help. Real help. The police, the sheriff, someone. But deep down, I already feared the truth. If that man had been watching us for months, maybe years. He wasn't afraid of the police. He wasn't afraid of consequences. He was afraid of only one thing. Losing something he believed already belonged to him. Daniel didn't wait anymore. He grabbed his laptop bag from the corner of the room and dumped everything onto the small hospital desk, tangled cords, a charger, a cracked USB drive, and a black leather notebook I'd never seen before. He breathed fast, like someone trying to outrun their own guilt. We should have done this months ago, he muttered. I tightened my hold on Lily. Done what, Daniel? He didn't answer. He opened the laptop, his fingers trembling so badly he mistyped the password twice. Daniel. He froze. And for the first time since the man in the woods appeared, he looked at me, really looked at me. I saw guilt in his eyes. Fear. And something else, something almost like shame. Emily, there are files you don't know about. My stomach dropped. He clicked open a folder without labels. Inside were dozens of video thumbnails, mostly static dark rooms, sidewalks, dim parking lots. Grainy footage, time-stamped at strange hours. 2:14 a.m. 4:52 a.m. 1:03 a.m. He sent these to me, Daniel whispered. At first from burner accounts. Then from anonymous emails. Sometimes just USBs left on our porch. I stared at him, horrified. You told me it was kids vandalizing the mailbox. It wasn't. He clicked a video at random. It opened to a shaky camera angle, someone standing far away in a parking lot. The footage zoomed in slowly. My heart stopped when I realized what it showed. Me. Pregnant. Walking alone toward the grocery store at night. My hands on my belly, my coat pulled tight against the cold. Lily didn't even exist yet, not in this world, at least. But he had been watching us even then. I covered my mouth with my hand, a hot wave of nausea hitting me. Daniel swallowed hard. He sent me dozens of these. He said he was checking on you. Checking on me? My voice rose, panicked. Daniel, this wasn't someone worried. This is obsession. He nodded slowly. He told me, Daniel hesitated. He told me that he knew you before I did. I stared at him, confused. What does that even mean? Before we met? Yes. That's impossible. Daniel shook his head. That man, whoever he is, said he found you. Not me. Said I stole you from him without even knowing. My skin crawled. I felt Lily shift slightly against me, a tiny sound escaping her. I held her closer, terrified of a world where someone else believed she belonged to them. Daniel opened another video. This one made my blood turn to ice. It was the inside of our home. Our living room. The footage showed me sleeping on the sofa, one hand resting over my pregnant belly. I remembered that night, Daniel was out of town. I thought the house was locked. I thought I was safe. But in the video, from behind the camera, a man whispered. "Soon." I screamed and slammed the laptop shut. The sound echoed sharply in the small room. Daniel reached for me, but I jerked away. "How long have you known about this?" He lowered his head. "I didn't want to scare you. I thought he'd stop." He said he just wanted updates. Updates? "Daniel, this is stalking." "I know," he snapped. "I know. And I made the biggest mistake of my life trying to negotiate with a crazy person instead of calling the police." Silence fell. Thick. Suffocating. Lily made a tiny snuffling sound, clueless to the terror unfolding around her. I forced my voice to steady. "Daniel, what did he want updates about?" He didn't answer. He simply opened the black leather notebook, the one I'd never seen before. Inside were printed pictures, notes, sketches, of me. But on the second page, was a photo of Lily. A photo taken just hours after she was born. Not by me. Not by Daniel. The man had been inside the hospital. Maybe closer than we ever realized. A chill ran through me so deep I felt it in my bones. And then Daniel whispered the words that broke me. "Emily, he thinks Lily is his." The room went silent after Daniel said those words. "He thinks Lily is his." They didn't feel like words at all. They felt like the floor had tilted, like gravity had changed, like everything in the world suddenly leaned toward danger. I held Lily tighter, her tiny heartbeat fluttering against mine. A mother's instinct isn't poetic, it's primal. And mine screamed that we were running out of time. "Daniel," I whispered, "why didn't you tell me sooner?" He rubbed his hands over his face, exhausted, ashamed. "Because I thought he was bluffing. People say crazy things online. I never imagined he'd actually follow us. Or film you. Or," his voice cracked. "Or get into the hospital." I looked at the leather notebook again. Page after page of my life, moments I didn't even remember, captured by someone I had never met. But the last page was the one that sent needles of fear down my spine. It held a printed email. No name. No signature. Just one sent line. "A child belongs with its true parent." My hands started shaking so badly I had to sit down. "Did you reply to him?" I asked. Daniel hesitated too long. "Daniel." "Yes," he whispered. "I told him to leave us alone. I told him Lily wasn't his. And that if he didn't stop, I'd go to the police." "And then?" "And then, he said I was already too late." The monitor above the bed beeped steadily, a cold reminder that time was moving whether we were ready or not. I felt Lily shift again, making a soft hungry sound. She had no idea the world outside her blanket wasn't safe anymore. I looked at Daniel. "We need to call security. Now." He nodded and pulled out his phone. But before he could dial, there was a sound from the hallway. Not footsteps. Not a nurse's cart. A soft, deliberate knock. 3 slow taps on the door. Daniel froze mid-dial. I felt my entire body tighten, every nerve firing like electricity. Another knock. This time slower. Like someone savoring the moment. Daniel stood first. "Stay behind me." But I didn't listen, mothers don't hide behind anyone. I shifted Lily into my left arm and reached toward the emergency call button on the wall. Before I could press it, a shadow moved under the door. Someone was standing directly on the other side. My heart slammed painfully in my chest. This wasn't a random visitor. This wasn't a nurse. Everything in my body recognized the wrongness, that same cold coil from the woods, from the hospital hallway, from that video whisper. Daniel took one step toward the door. The shadows shifted. And then, a low voice, muffled through the wood, said, "Emily. I just want to see her." My blood turned to ice. He knew my name. Daniel lunged for the doorknob, not to open it, but to hold it shut. "Get away from this room," he shouted. But the man outside didn't move. Didn't respond. He just stood there. Breathing. I could hear it, slow, steady, like someone who felt entitled to be here. I backed toward the far wall, clutching Lily so tightly she stirred and whimpered. "Daniel, security, now." He grabbed the phone again, but his hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. The knock came one more time. Soft. Gentle. Like a father asking to hold his newborn. Then, footsteps. Walking away. But slowly. Like he wanted us to know he wasn't running. Like he'd be back. Daniel exhaled shakily and finally pressed the call button. Security. Now. Someone's trying to get into our room. The operator's voice crackled through the speaker. "Sir, we already have officers heading your way." "Already? How?" Daniel asked. There was a pause on the line. "We received a report," she said quietly. "About a man wandering the maternity floor asking which room had the newborn girl." My blood froze. Daniel and I stared at each other, terrified, speechless, knowing one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't remember walking out of the hospital, only the way the cold air felt when it hit my face, sharp enough to remind me I was still alive. The baby shifted in my arms, a tiny sound, a breath, a flutter, the only real thing left after a morning that tore my world open. Behind me, the automatic glass doors slid shut, sealing away the doctor's voice, and Mark's silence. I kept walking. There was a bench near the emergency parking lot, old metal painted over too many times, still warm from the sun. I sat slowly, holding my son tighter, like maybe if I kept him close enough, the truth wouldn't hurt as much. But truth doesn't soften. Not even for new mothers. The doctor's whisper replayed in my head, slow and impossible. "He's not the father." "But you already knew that, didn't you?" "No. I didn't." I wanted to scream that I didn't. But even my thoughts sounded tired, like they'd aged 20 years in 1 hour. Somewhere behind me, I heard footsteps. Slow, familiar, hesitant. Mark. I didn't turn around. Not yet. The wind moved gently over my hair, carrying the smell of gasoline, hospital soap, and early fall leaves. My son's tiny hand slipped free from the blanket, searching blindly for warmth. I offered him mine. When Mark finally spoke, his voice was small, smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Can we talk?" I still didn't look back. Not because I didn't want to. But because everything I had believed about us was lying on a hospital floor behind those doors, broken beyond repair. He came around slowly, standing in front of me, his hands trembling the way mine had trembled earlier. "I didn't cheat on you," he whispered. "I swear it. If the test says he's not mine, then something's wrong. Something happened we don't understand yet. I don't know how." His voice cracked. I looked up at him finally. Not with anger. Not even disappointment. Just empty. Like someone who had run out of places to hide hope. "I didn't cheat either," I said quietly. "So if the test is right, then someone did something to us." His face changed. A quiet kind of horror, slow, dawning, undeniable. He sat beside me, elbows on his knees, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. "Your OB, the nurses, that night you fainted, the medication mix-up," his words trailed off, threads of fear pulling them apart. "I don't know," I whispered. "But someone does." The silence between us wasn't hateful. Just heavy. A weight that made breathing feel like work. Cars passed by. A mother walked in holding her toddler's hand. A paramedic pushed an empty wheelchair to the side entrance. Life kept moving. But ours had paused. Mark finally looked at the baby, our baby, no matter what papers said. May I hold him? I hesitated only a moment before handing him over. Mark held him like he might break, like the child was made of light instead of skin and bone. And something softened in me. Not forgiveness. Just recognition. We were both victims of the same truth. After a long moment, he looked at me. Whatever this is, we find out together. If you want that. The sun warmed the side of my face. I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing in the world again. I want answers, I said. And I want the truth. All of it. He nodded. Then that's where we start. Not with love. Not with trust. Not with promises. With truth. I took my baby back into my arms, kissed the top of his soft head, and stood. Let's go home, I whispered. And for the first time all day, the ground beneath me felt steady. Not healed. Not whole. Just steady enough to move forward. One step at a time.